I'm going to tell you a story that starts with 2 funerals, but I'm hopefully not going to make you cry that much. It's not sad. In January of 2016, my life took like a pivotal turn that, people say sometimes like, oh yeah, did you have that moment where you were sitting in one place and you had this pivotal moment? It wasn't quite like that, so I'm just going to tell you what really happened in the story. The first one started at a funeral in January 2016, and I'm from Alberta, so it was very cold and very crisp that day, but we get this really beautiful snow that sits on the edges of the trees. I remember driving out to the funeral and stopping so I could take pictures of the snow because it was so beautiful. And the funeral was my dad's best friend, who had also been my dad's boss. And he was 70, so that's kind of that age where like, oh, old enough, you've lived a good life. It's not that tragic, but not that old. And I sat in the service, and like most of us usually do at funerals, I was thinking about myself and what I would say at my own funeral, what other people would say at my own funeral, and would I be happy with what they said at my own funeral? And I thought about my dad's boss and the impact he'd had on my life. Because for many years, he provided my dad an amazing job, which provided me a great life. Once he even paid for our whole family to go to Disneyland just before my dad got super duper sick. And so Gordon had had a huge impact on my life. And then his accountant got up. And I snapped back into the room where the funeral was, and I wasn't thinking about me in Disneyland anymore. I was thinking about what the accountant was talking about. And this accountant talked about how he and Gordon had done business together for 40 years. I know we have business owners in this room. Can you imagine 40 years meeting with your accountant? Most boring meeting ever every year, right? You're like, oh, we're crying out loud. But this accountant started to say all the lessons he'd learned from Gord, like, always leave a little juice in the lemon, which was like, don't squeeze a deal until you take all the money out of it. He had a list of these things he'd learned from Gordon. And so I got in my car and I wrote a blog post about all the things I'd learned from the funeral and how I was going to be a different business owner, that I could make an impact in the world just by being a business owner and providing good jobs. I kind of logged the blog post and moved on with my day. And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from my little sister, and she showed up at my house, and our grandma had had an aneurysm. She was 88. She was hot, but she was 88. And we went up to Edmonton, 2 hours away, and said goodbye to her and did all of the things. And that's really when it hit me that we all live a legacy every day. Because my grandma was bold and fierce and tiny. She was 5'1" and cute and always perfectly dressed. At 19 years old, she came from France as a war bride over to Canada. I don't know if we have any other descendants of war brides here, but it's a huge number of us came from those war brides. She came from sophisticated France to northern rural Alberta and lived in a granary with no running water and had 12 cloth diapers and a brand new baby. And the only way she could wash the diapers is with the water she carried from the well. How fierce was she at that early age? And I got thinking about, at her funeral, there were 300 people in the room. She was 88. Most of her friends were dead. Her and my grandpa went to funerals on a regular basis as social functions. And there were still 300 people in the room, not to mention more than 100 people from France sent us messages and flowers and emails and cards telling us what an impact Grandma had had on their life. And at her funeral, people would walk up and they'd be like, your grandma was so wonderful, and then they'd tell me this amazing story about her. And it hit me then that, you know what? She didn't wake up every day thinking, oh my goodness, I'm gonna leave a legacy and I'm gonna be amazing, and nope. She just was bold and she was fierce and she lived her life and she lived in freedom and she appreciated the fact that she had the freedom to live the life that she did. And she lived by her values and she imparted it on all of us. There were 13 grandkids and 4 kids, and she made sure that we knew that we were loved and that we better be bold, and we always needed to have a growth mindset. She learned a new word every day. Every day, she'd open up and English was her second language because French was her first language. She'd open her little dictionary and learn a new word, and then correct the letters we sent to her with a red pen and send them back to us. She was so bold, once we took her out in the bush when she was about 70. We took her out in the bush and she was wearing white, like this color of white, but it was her shirt and her pants and her shoes. And she walked across a log over muskeg. Do you know what that is? It's kind of like mud below you. And she lost her she lost her footing and went face first into the mud and got up and washed herself off and was like, oh, well, it'll wash. And here's what I took away from those 2 funerals, is that you can live a legacy no matter who you are or where you are. Every single one of you in this room has a legacy. There are people who will remember you. There are people who will be your kids, your grandkids, people that you impressed on a one-day thing. Even if you don't have kids, you'll have nieces and nephews and people that you make an impact on. And for me, every day when I put on a piece of my grandma's jewelry and I channel my inner grandma, I think about the fact that she was a bold, fierce businesswoman who worked as hard as she could and left her family what she could. And so my call to all of you is that in today's world, we have this awesome freedom of being able to share our stories. Everybody has a phone in their pocket, and that phone has a camera on it, and there's a way to take a video. And you can come and do things like this, and you can share your story on Facebook, and you can absolutely inspire people. Even if it's not your dream to be on a stage, you inspire people just in the way that you live. And so my question for you is, what are you going to do about that? What is your legacy? What do you want it to be? Pick up the pen and start writing your life the way you want it. Thank you.